Hello there, Drew Handish of Whiskey Lore. It's time for another whiskey tasting. Today we are going to Islay for a non-peated whiskey, and this is the third in a series of videos that I've done on the distillery BRUICHLADDICH, which experiments with barley. And so the first one we tried was bear barley, and bear, B-E-R-E, is a type of barley that was used during the early years in the Campbelltown region, which is right by, say, here's Islay here, and here's Campbelltown. And so these are the regions that, whiskey in Scotland really, as far as we know, came from. And those early farmers were using in Campbelltown, they were using that bear barley, which is a smaller grain barley, and it is one that, according to Ian McAllister at Glen Scotia, is very tough to work with. BRUICHLADDICH has decided to work with it, and they went up to Orkney and brought some down. So we did some tasting in an episode about that, and very peach, heavy peach. And so if you like something sweet, that was really great. Now we're going to get a chance to compare this latest one that I'm going to do, which is the Islay barley, to the organic and to the bear barley. The organic came from the Inverness region of Scotland, right in the center. And then as we start heading down to Islay, that's where we're going to get this Islay barley from. So it's distilled and grown on Islay. In fact, they have 17 different farmers they have agreements with to grow barley on Islay. They even grow their own. They have a farm called Octomore Farm, and they grow some of their barley there, but none of that is being used in here. If you want to taste that, you can try that in Octomore. And so, like all the other BRUICHLADDICHs, this is going to be 50% alcohol by volume, all the other ones that I've tried, at least anyway. This one, though, is a little darker in color than the other two, but yet this is only a 6-year whiskey. So why do you think that this is darker if it's 2 years younger than the other two whiskeys that we tried? While you're thinking on that, a reminder, if you like the video, go ahead and like it now so you don't forget at the end, and then subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And I had the chance to talk to Alan Logan on the Whiskey Lore, the Interviews podcast, and we went over all of this. We talked a lot about bear barley and where they get their different types of barley from, so you can really get a full idea of that there. But unpeated, so color is not coming from peat, it's actually coming from the barrels that are used. Now this is the point where we diverge from the first two whiskeys, which were both aged exclusively in ex-bourbon barrels. This one is aged in ex-bourbon barrels, 75% of it, and 25% of it comes from French wine casks. So those wine casks are going to give a little bit more, especially in European oak, going to give a little bit more tannin, going to give a little bit more color to the whiskey. And so I believe they blend these. It's not that it spends 75% of its life in one and then it gets moved over to another, which is what a lot of bourbon distilleries do. But in this particular case, it's not finishing. It's actually what they call marrying. So sometimes I'll say blending, and that's a really bad term to use because blending is when you take whiskeys from two different distilleries and put them together, because blending in Scotland means that you could have grain whiskey in there, like corn whiskey, wheat whiskey, rye whiskey, along with your single malt grain. So gotta say, it is marrying these two barrels together to create what is in this bottle right here. So with that, how different will it be? Well, unfortunately, we can't compare Islay barley apples to apples with the other two because different types of barrels will create a difference. But I think we saw from those first two whiskeys that there can be a dramatic flavor change between one type of barley and another type of barley. So all those people who say that the flavor of a whiskey comes 70% or more from the barrel, I believe rule of thumb would be that's true for bourbons because they are heavily corn influenced, and maybe that allows for, because there's less in terms of flavor coming from that corn, that leaves more to the barrel to do work on the whiskey. But I think in terms of single malt, because we're only working with one grain here, and it's a grain that has a lot of character all on its own, I just don't think that that the barrel is going to make quite as much of a difference on this as it will make on a bourbon or a rye. Where it will sometimes on Scotch have an effect is if you have peat, and then the longer it's in the barrel, the more it's going to kill off peat. By the way, very interesting that I talked to John Campbell of formerly Laphroaig, now Islay, and he said that his favorite year of Laphroaig was at 8 years. And so I would say very interesting and very telling that BRUICHLADDICH has bottled most of these at 8 years, this one at 6 years, but that we also have that European oak cask. And just because it says 6 years doesn't mean that all the whiskey is 6 years. It actually could be 8 years from the bourbon cask and 6 years from the European oak cask. And in that case, you have to say 6 because you can't, get a mean average there or play shenanigans like that. So you have to go with the youngest whiskey in the bottle. And that's why sometimes you get whiskeys like Laphroaig Lore, which doesn't have an age statement on it, but they say it has much older whiskeys in it and some very young whiskeys in it. If they put an age statement on, it's the youngest age that they have. Now this actually brings a lot of baking spice to me. The vanilla is there, and I'm getting that peach again from the bear. But there's no bear barley in this. Got kind of a nice warm toasty smell. And the vanilla is like vanilla frosting on a cake. And as soon as I said that, it's really interesting because my brain suddenly tuned into raisin, which I have not gotten up to this point. But for some reason, I started thinking of like carrot cake with vanilla frosting over the top of it. And then all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, raisin. There is raisin in this. So it's fun how the mind will play with that. Now you're asking, why are these whiskeys so different? Barley being the only real change. In this case, it has the raisin is probably coming from the European oak, but it's because of the weather, the area that these distilleries are in, especially for the one that was most drastically different, the organic, which came from the Inverness region, which let's pull it up one more time here and show you. If you think about it, Orkney, where bear comes from, and then Islay, where the Islay barley comes from, they're getting these weather patterns that come up this way and cross, and they beat up this side of Scotland. The organic, comes from in here. So it's sheltered. It actually has a range of mountains between it and this weather that comes in. So that would explain, in a way, why you get such a difference in the organic versus these two, because this one we're back to that peach again that we got from the Orkney Islands. So weather plays a lot, time, weather, the earth. The earth is going to probably be a little bit more affected by sea characteristics, maybe iodine. From the west coast, Islay gets a lot of iodine in the water, or maybe kind of like a seaweedy character or something like that that may somehow weave its way into the flavor of the barley, because wind is hitting this barley, and so it's got to be influenced in some way or another by its surroundings. Yeah, it's like I said, it's still got that peach in it, but it's very mild, and then we have that vanilla frosting coming out. Unlike the bear barley, There's some baking spice in there. Ginger towards the end. Ooh, warm on the tongue. This is not like the first two. The peach is there, but it's mild. There's a little grapefruit in there. There's ginger. The tongue's a little warmer on this one. Could be that it's a little younger, and that's part of the reason. Not really getting a lot of tannins in it, which is interesting. The European oak isn't really bringing too much of that. Maybe a little cinnamon in there, baking cinnamon. A hint of mint, actually, that I pulled in there. And a little lemon that comes in. Interesting. When I first tasted this, and there's a little grain that pops in at the end. When I first tasted this, I thought, yeah, this is one you're going to have to sit with because it's got a lot going on. It's almost like a hybrid of the two that we tried before this, but leans a little bit more towards the Bear Barley Orkney experience. A little saline in there that's coming in as well. But I think it's one of those that you have to sit with, like a Craigellachie 13 or a Glengarry 12 or Writer's Tears, the double oak that I did. Those are all whiskeys I just like to sit, relax. And sometimes when you take your mind off of it, it will actually bring out some flavors because you're trying too hard to find flavors. And so that can sometimes impede your ability to relax and just let the flavors come to you. That's very enjoyable. I was very happy to get to taste those three different ones because I've seen them on the shelf and I've said, really, what's the difference? I mean, but when you think about grains coming from different places and different weather patterns and in this case, different barrels, it's going to make a difference. Oh, nice toasted oak kind of a smell that I'm getting now. Very nice, very nice. Well, like I say, like, subscribe. More videos are coming. It's April Fool's Day. I didn't have any April Fools for today. Sorry. I'm sure enough other people have probably tricked you into something or other today. So I'll just leave it at this. Cheers and Slainte. Yeah, that's a good whiskey. Maybe a very good whiskey. It's a good whiskey. Jury's still out.